Hey everyone, BoxOfMusic here, and today I am doing a requested video of a tutorial on how to make your own DIY music box song. Now, just in case you've stumbled upon this video and haven't seen any of the videos on my channel before, I am BoxOfMusic, and for the past 6 years or so I have been making illustrated and sometimes animated music box videos here on YouTube. While these DIY music box kits are not something that I created, I do kind of think I invented the whole animated music box thing, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, here's an example. Because I've never really seen anyone else do this type of thing on YouTube. But I've recently started sharing the magic a little bit with you guys, and in a previous video I talked about how the 30-note music box actually works. But today I'm going to teach you how you can make your own song. Now, before we get started, I do want to put a disclaimer here that if you don't know how to read sheet music, this tutorial might not be very helpful. I've had a lot of people reach out to me over the years asking for help with making their own music box songs. And the first thing I always ask is, do you know how to read sheet music? And often the answer I hear is no. And if you don't know how to read sheet music, there might be ways you could still do this. But this specific tutorial that I made does rely heavily on the fact that you understand the basics of rhythm, quarter notes, eighth notes, that type of thing, and you can read the notes on a scale. Mainly treble clef, but depending on the sheet music that you use, you might also need to know bass clef. So if you don't know how to read sheet music, I recommend watching another video first and then coming back to this one, and it will make a lot more sense. Before we get started on creating our musical masterpiece, I want to give you a quick tour of the music box paper itself. For this tutorial, I'm just going to be using this scrap piece of music box paper. Normally it's a lot longer than this, but for the purposes of this video, this works just fine. I want to start off by pointing out the range that is available to us on this 30-note music box. If you have a music box with a different range, these same concepts will apply, but the specific notes will be different to you. Now, if you're curious about how this 30-note music box works, I actually made a video about this recently that I'll link to in the card in the description. Notice the grid here on the music box paper, and you see all these notes listed here at the beginning. So each horizontal line corresponds to a different note. So there's 30 lines on this music box sheet. Now, something to point out, which comes into play when you're picking out what song you want to do, is notice certain notes, such as C sharp and D sharp, only appear once. So if you are doing a song that has a lot of C sharps or D sharps in it, you will only be able to play those notes in one octave. So sometimes that can be a bit tricky with certain songs, so I always like to check the key signature first, kind of glance through the sheet music and see if this is going to be an issue. Now, on the other hand, you'll notice that some notes, such as C, appear quite frequently on this music box. So what this means is the note C appears in 4 different octaves, which can be really handy in delving into that range of the music box and playing really high notes and really low notes and kind of getting that variety. You might also notice that these notes do appear in a chromatic scale, going up the notes would be on a piano, essentially. But you might notice at the bottom, this differs a little bit. We go from C to D, and then we skip all the way up to G, skipping E and F. And we also don't have many sharps down here at the bottom either. And that's mostly just because, again, we're limited to only 30 notes. So when whoever was creating this music box, they were trying to just pick commonly used notes. So when we get down to the bass clef notes, we have a little bit more limited range. But again, if a note that you need isn't there, you can try playing it in a different octave and kind of messing around with it. I do that a lot when I'm making my music box arrangements. I often have to change the octaves of notes just to make it fit better with the music box. Alright, so now that we've covered the basics of these horizontal lines, which each represent one of the 30 different notes that are available to us on our music box, now let's talk about these vertical lines. So each of these vertical lines represents a different beat, so that helps us with the rhythm. So for example, these solid lines will represent the quarter notes, while the dashed lines will represent the eighth notes. Now again, I'm just saying this in more basic terms. Of course, you could make this in cut time or half time and change that up, but generally speaking, it's an easy convention to make the solid lines quarter notes and the dashed lines eighth notes. Or if you want to think of it as the on beat and the off beat, whatever helps you think of it. Typically, I will go and find piano sheet music, since that usually works well for the music box. But again, I might have to change octaves of notes or cut notes out, because I've mentioned this in other videos. If there are two notes that are the same note, they must be at least a quarter note apart, or else the gears don't have enough time to spin back around to hit it again. So that is why it's kind of more difficult to do a lot of pop songs on the music box, because they have a lot of repeating notes. So that's another thing I look for when choosing a song. Does it have a lot of repeating notes? If so, yeah, there are ways I could change the octave on some of the notes or maybe switch some notes, but if I have to change it too much where the song's not going to be recognizable or just not sound as good, then I might find a different song. The song I've chosen today for this tutorial is Path of the Wind from My Neighbor Totoro. I love Studio Ghibli. I know you guys love Studio Ghibli, so I figured this would be a good song to start with. But I'll only show you about one measure, and then you can finish the rest on your own. So typically, like I said, I'll go out and find piano sheet music. I'll try and find it for free if I can. MuseScore is a great site, has a lot of free music. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I actually have made sheet music specific to the exact arrangement that I made in my music box video. Now the reason I made this specific sheet music, I don't usually do this, but I'll let you guys in on a little secret that I am currently working on creating a shop, which you might know from one of my previous videos, and this is something that is helping with figuring out how to print out my music sheets effectively. So anyways, normally on the piano sheet music that I use, it has both treble clef and bass clef. But since I wrote down this sheet music directly using the notes that I did in the video, I just put it all on treble clef just to be easier. Since the music strip is just one strip, I just put all the notes on, and so this might be a little bit easier for this tutorial as well. So that's why I thought this would be a great song to start with. So I have my blue lines here representing each quarter note, and in this song each measure has 4 beats, so these 4 blue lines represent the first measure. So right now we're just going to look at this first measure. So just to visually make this super apparent, I'm going to highlight each of these quarter notes on the sheet music in blue. So we have beat 1, beat 2. Now notice this blue line is in between the notes here just because this quarter note is on the off beat. So just being careful where we're placing these blue lines. And then beat 4 is right here. And just to be even clearer, I will go ahead and highlight the eighth notes for the offbeat in orange. So we have an orange here, and then that corresponds with this dashed line. Orange here corresponds with this dashed line. Orange here, and then this last orange line is right here, right? Because this is a quarter note, so there is that 1/8 note space. The and of 4 is hanging out right there. So adding that in, now we have our full measure ready to go. Now normally I don't color code this, obviously, but I know a lot of people prefer visuals when they're learning something, so I just thought this might be a great way to introduce this subject, just to kind of grasp why I'm placing the dots where I'm placing them, so you can really see how this rhythm translates onto the music box strip. Now using blue might not have been the best choice, it's kind of hard to see now, but here we have a C. Now again, you can choose where you want to put this based on whatever makes sense for your song, but typically if you're working in treble clef, I would say this is the C that is in the middle of the staff. So this C we have here is an octave lower than that, so we'll put it all the way down here. And then we have a G, we have a higher octave G, and then finishing it off with the highest C available to us. And then continuing on the orange line, we have an F, and then we have a B. Now I forgot to mention, don't forget the key signature. We have A flat, B flat, and E flat, so I don't think I messed up yet. But for here, this B will be B flat, but the music box sheet uses sharps instead of flats, so we know that A sharp is the same thing as B flat. But say I forgot, which I've done this before, say I forgot that this key signature was here, and I accidentally did a B natural instead of a B flat, and if I didn't catch it soon enough and I already punched out that note, you can just stick a little tape on the back and it will be all good to go and just re-punch out the correct note. So I'll continue the rest in time lapse. And if you want, while I'm marking this thing up like crazy, if you're still kind of like, whoa, those dots, I'm not really sure. Well, look, this, if we just connect them, and we can make it look exactly, not exactly, but pretty close to what we have on the sheet music here. If you prefer to think of it as the boxes on the grid instead of thinking of it as the sheet music, so we see this quarter note takes up 2 of these little boxes, right? You see like here's one box and here's the second box. So this quarter note takes up 2 of those little boxes before the next note hits, whereas now this note was an 8th note, so it only takes up 1 box before the next note hits. And then that note is a quarter note, so it takes up 1 box, 2 box, and then now that takes us to the very first beat of our second measure. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Hopefully that visual helped a little bit. And then from here, you'll just take your hole puncher, you'll punch out where all of the black notes are. But again, just be careful with where you're placing your notes, that they must be a quarter note apart from each other if they're the same note. So what I mean by that is, say you had a note here, then you can't put a note there. You can, but it's not gonna play. So you need to make sure there's at least a quarter note space in between those notes if you want to ensure that it's going to play and that the gear has enough time to spin around and hit the note. So punch all those out and then crank it through the music box and you'll have your beautiful musical creation. I'll insert a clip of my final Path of the Wind music box so you can hear that. I hope that my video was helpful, but if not, if you still have questions, please leave a comment below and I'll try to answer it as best as I can, or if there are enough questions, I can make a part 2. While you're here, you know the drill. If you go ahead and subscribe so you can keep updated with all of my music box creations, as well as a music box shop that will be opening soon, or depending when I post this, maybe I've already announced it, but anyways, keep an eye out for that. And if you want to pick up any of my merch to help support me, I did add some new designs to my shop as well as some coloring pages. And if you ever do buy my merch or color in my coloring pages or anything like that and you want to share them with me, please send me a DM on Twitter, or you can email me at boxofmusiccreations@gmail.com. I would love to see you guys wearing the merch or see how your creativity shines with my coloring pages. I also added some accessory pouches for your art supplies, as well as some other new designs. But anyways, enough about me. Go have fun and be creative, and don't forget to think outside the box of music. Was that cheesy? I'm just trying to get the pants in here because of my little avatar that I made of myself. It's wearing these colored pants, so I'm just trying to somehow incorporate my pants in this video.